people don't probably know exactly how it impacts, but they basically, even if you've got a credit card with a 10 grand limit and then you only owe 2 grand on the credit card, they basically take the full limit as a liability to the borrower. So
Which basically means they're going to look at you and say, oh, you've got 8K less of earning potential, therefore we're going to lend you, more than 8K because it's a multiplier factor, but it's going to reduce your lending capability. Yeah,
so example would be I had a couple with it obviously depends on your other factors, but I had a couple with a 10K credit card that reduced their lending by 100K. So it's quite substantial. And even if you reduce that credit card down to 3 grand or 2 grand or something like that,
they still look at it as the 10. Welcome to Slice, property made possible. We're a platform on a mission to reduce barriers to home ownership. This podcast is a safe space for our community to learn together and build the confidence required to start on their property journey. When you're ready to start, head along to slicetobuy.com and sign up for your free dashboard. Kia ora and welcome back to another episode of Slice the podcast. Today we are joined by another real estate guru and we are talking all things property. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Thank you, Amy.
Andre, we start these off by talking a little bit about your first home buyer journey. So perfect. What can you share with us about that experience?
It's going back quite a while now. So 2016, me and my wife now, or partner at the time, actually bought our first home in Christchurch. So I know you had Andrew Nicol on a few weeks back, probably a little bit after that, but post-earthquake and still in a really, I guess, pretty comparatively cheap market compared to the likes of Auckland. I think we purchased for 450K. So, but yeah, it was a really interesting process. It was still really competitive because of the price point obviously being so low. So yeah, we were going to open homes and it was 10, 20 people at every one. There was probably at least 2-3 offers on the table. You were going into backup offers and multi-offers and all that sort of thing. So pretty intimidating. Yeah, for a first home buyer. But learnt heaps. I probably put in 10 offers before we got a house. So learnt the whole sale and purchase process and lawyers and everything else between. So yeah, really good.
Yeah, and in terms of, I guess, that buying process and what you learnt, like what were the probably biggest learnings that you took away from that first experience?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually uneducated at the time, put a post up on Facebook and just said, real estate agents, anyone that's in real estate, just looking to buy a house, can you give us a buzz or a message and see if you can help? And actually a property developer messaged me and said, I wouldn't use real estate agents to buy the house. To purchase the house, it's generally them that are selling it. So if you want some help, let me know. Yeah. He was kind enough, he's still a mentor of mine today, that same guy. Yeah. So he was kind enough to sort of meet up with me, give me some tips. And the first tip he gave me was go and look at 100 open homes, then come back and see me. So that's pretty good advice. I'm a mortgage advisor now, so I say the same thing to clients that I sort of do. It's a really good way to market research your specific criteria.
Yeah.
So I think it was probably one of the best tips I got. And then on top of that, I kept a clear file of every property I visited, kept notes on top of the flyer that the real estate agent gives you at the time. And I passed that sort of learning on to some of my clients now as well. So.
And in terms of like the notes that you took, would you kind of detail what different properties were selling for to get?
Yeah. So then you'd start to build up a bit of a price point knowledge, sort of comparative to properties that you'd already seen in the same areas and stuff like that. So it's literally market research for free. You're not paying anyone. You're just writing down your experiences, and we'd write down like the agencies that we kind of thought were going to be a bit tougher to buy through and stuff like that. Like just everything.
The feedback that you were getting from being in market, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's really great advice, because we do talk about the importance of like actually knowing what properties are selling for and using that to evaluate what you might pay for your future property. Yeah. But even if you aren't looking at buying property immediately, there's an opportunity to start that learning journey now and look at, 100%. Obviously the market's going to change over time, but actually just get familiar with what it's like to look at open homes, what different properties are going for, because a lot of those open homes are online now too, so you can do that from your bed,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I guess you can narrow down the criteria from your phone, And then step 2 is you actually have to go, because what you can't see online is the people that are there, the demand that the property's got. And then, like, if you get into a multi-offer and you lose out, there's still knowledge in that of the price point, because those details don't really get released till probably settlement. So that period you kind of learn how to pick up what stuff actually went for as well. So
And what do you think was the biggest challenge of that process? Was it the multi-offers and the competition? And
the fear of missing out. Like, you just start getting, like, the confidence gets dented a little bit, because 9 offers in, you're thinking, shit, what have I signed up for, kind of thing. But that was the hardest thing. But then just going and regrouping and trying to go again.
It's just exhausting, hey, when you've done so much to get there to the point where you're actually able to purchase, and then you've got this whole second challenge of actually winning at auction or making an offer successfully.
100%.
So how did you win? Was it on that note, was it at auction, or was it through a multi-offer or an offer, or
so good question. It's funny how things work, right when you think you're at that breaking point, things all of a sudden get, and it's the same with business, I'm sure you would have experienced, like, you're right at the point where you want to break, and then something just clicks.
Things kind of break through.
So what happened
but
was...
that happens like time and time again. But there's always a new breaking point.
So I guess we were like 90% towards fail, like literally 9 offers in, and the 10th offer came from a guy that seen my original Facebook post. He messaged me just on Facebook, and we ended up buying private through them.
Oh, amazing.
And so him and his partner were unfortunately separating. She wanted to go travelling. He wanted to just wrap things up, and he gave us a chance to put an offer in before they went to market, because they would just want to get everything sorted quickly. The downside was the house was actually under earthquake repair, so we didn't have access to the property straight away, but settlement was just once that it had all been sorted out. So in a way it was kind of a positive, because it gave us a little bit more time to save some more money and have a backup fund.
For maintenance and things like that.
But it was when we moved in. So, it's funny how those things happen.
That's so cool, though. Like, you started the journey with, putting it out there to the universe and just making a post. And then that's how you finished your journey as well. I thought you were going to say we were at auction and there were 10 other people and we finally got through. But it's ironic. Like, sometimes you just have to, try different avenues and do what you can to, find different opportunities. So, congrats.
No, it was a really awesome experience, and you wouldn't take any of that back, because I learned more throughout all of the other stuff process than I did through the win at the end of it. So I'd never take that stuff back. And I've done videos of properties we missed out on my Instagram, and broken down what our thought process through from the flyer to the video. And some of those probably ended up in a better position long term, because they had land and stuff. We ended up buying a townhouse, but still, that whole learning process, I learned shitloads. So
what's your Instagram handle as well?
Andre.thepropertyguy. Property and mortgages is basically what content I throw up, and then sometimes if I'm having a thought or a moment in the car, I'll chuck up a video as well, just to sort of multitask and try not to waste time
variety.
in traffic.
Nice. And in terms of obviously that learning, you've now taken that into your career and into mortgage advisory. What has that career journey looked like in moving into property? Did it sort of start with your first home purchase, or?
Definitely. So just having that property mentor that I mentioned, and that's why I would always advise that people try to find someone like that early in the process, because you might not end up, the advice he sort of gave me at the start, you might not end up being in property investing, but at least you have the option at that point in time to make the decision, rather than you get to that point and go, oh shit, I wish I would have capitalised off. Because actually off that first house, we revalued the property 2 years into the journey and bought another house straight away. We sold that original property and probably had the option to pay off the mortgage on the other property. We would have been mortgage free. But because we had learnt and got to that point, we had the options, and then basically made the decision to reinvest that money and go again. Like, we grew up in a pretty roughish sort of neighbourhood in Christchurch, and a lot of guys that I played rugby league with when I was young and stuff, like, they'd be like, oh, how the hell did you end up with 2 houses and this and that? And I'm like, oh, to be honest, I can show you how to do it if you want. Like, it might not suit you, but I'll show you how. And then we went from there, basically got my ticket, and here I am. So I'll be about a year and a half into being a mortgage advisor now, and
Yeah.
enjoying it, and I'll continue to do it, I think so.
And it's admirable that you want to kind of give that knowledge back. I mean, that's pretty much what we're trying to do with Slice, reducing barriers to ownership. And a lot of that is through education. So, you being on your socials and sharing, different insights that you learned through your buying process, that's all about reducing that barrier. And for people that, from different communities that feel that that's out of reach, actually seeing other people achieve that and thinking, if you can see it, you can believe it, right?
Exactly, yeah. And so the guy that property mentor, sorry to keep talking about him, maybe you need to get him on the Slice podcast.
Yeah, apparently we do. Who is this guy? Elusive property.
Yeah. So circling back to him, that's the exact thing that happened. So I got him, he messaged me. He was actually the captain of our league club probably 15 years before I was playing. So he was sort of a little bit older than me, but I knew who he was. And I knew that he was from the exact same sort of background and thing that I was from, so I knew he wasn't, full of shit, so to speak. But also knew if he can do it, how do we unlock that, and how do we figure out how to do it too?
And I think it's really important to be curious around that as well, because we get a lot of hate thrown on our social posts and things like that, because we do talk about how a lot of people get help from parents, and that's just the way that it is. And people will go, oh yeah, mummy and daddy bought them the house. Often that's not the case. They've saved X amount of the deposit, and then they've maybe leveraged or borrowed a small amount off them that they still have to pay interest on. And it's really just, instead of kind of feeling resentful, shifting that energy into a more curious energy. And as you did, you took that curiosity and said, hey, I know this guy's got all this knowledge. I wonder what he can tell me about how I might be able to do that. Yeah. So it really is I think there's a big tip that's come out of this conversation already, is actually looking for mentors and getting curious, as opposed to just thinking that it's not for me or it's not achievable.
Yeah, 100%. It's a funny one. It's hard to approach that subject because everyone's kind of different. But I remember someone that was buying around the same time as us, and in our friend group, I won't mention any names, but just a scenario, they didn't want to borrow a deposit off their parents, and they ended up getting into their house and paying a higher interest rate, because obviously you pay the LEM or LMI or whatever they want to charge you these days, banks, for the lower deposit.
Yeah, if you have a lower deposit, you basically have to pay more in mortgage repayments, more interest on that mortgage.
So he didn't want to pay that, but then when he moved into his house, he didn't have any money. He didn't want any
to take
help
that,
from
any
parents.
Support,
Yeah, but then when he got into his house, he didn't have any money because he had higher repayments, couldn't afford the furniture that he wanted once he got in, so he wasn't really living that comfortably. And then I also used to just sort of joke and laugh with him that he's around at his parents' house for dinner 5 nights a week as well. So I was like, whoa, what are we doing?
What are we doing? But you won't take it.
Yeah. So I was like, come on, mate. We're all, But yeah, it's a good point you make. It's hard. And everyone's got their own.
And everyone's got different
values.
circumstances, and you may not have the opportunity to do that though as well. So it's not that, but it's just not begrudging other people their opportunities, and just thinking, well, what are mine then? So maybe you don't have a parent, but is there a friend that you could do something with, or is there a mentor or someone that you know that's good in the space that can help you identify your opportunities? Come to Slice, that's another opportunity for you. That's why we're here. Yeah. So, or, have a chat with you, Andre. But I think it's an interesting mindset that I'm seeing more and more of it around, a lot of people are more comfortable sort of thinking, well, I don't want to do that and I wouldn't do that, and begrudging other people rather than getting curious. So I think that's a good point to highlight.
100%, yeah. And if that's your choice, then cool. Continue to do what you're doing. And those people, to be honest, probably live a more fruitful lifestyle in terms of other disposable.
Day.
Yeah. So cool, that's fine. Yeah. But also there needs to be help for people that do want it as well. So.
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of now moving into your mortgage advisory, space, what does that look like? Are you working mostly out of Tauranga? Obviously you've driven here today from there.
Yeah.
And what are you seeing in that market? Because I'm actually interested in moving to Tauranga. I'm just gonna get some feedback, get some tips.
Yeah. So we own our house we live in Mount Maunganui, and I basically go to open homes a lot during the weekends with real estate agents. Actually, I thought that was a good way to get in front of potential purchases
Yeah.
early on to
Good
build
hustle.
business. Yeah. So, and also I get to research open homes in the weekend in that way. So I pass any houses that I think suit first home buyers on to those clients of mine, or I work within a team of 5 advisors. So anyone else, we sort of send it in the group message and pass that on. But yeah, the Tauranga market's pretty expensive, but there are pockets and areas that, and at the moment particularly, the market's, I would say, quite flat. So
Yeah.
even like my mother-in-law's actually buying a house close to us to be closer to her grandson, which is my son. He's eight months old. So
Nice.
yeah. So new build round the corner from us, and she's looking in like the $900 to $1 million category, and
Yeah.
she's looking like she'll pick something up in that category. So she was a backup offer that fell through yesterday, but she'll just keep chugging along. So yeah, it's still in my mind that's a lot of money, but like if you're a couple and
Yeah, I mean, it's no different to Auckland, really. And it's still, that's a price point that definitely we see first home buyers.
Well, you
looking at.
approach Slice and
Co-own it.
Co-own it together.
Yeah, we've got a mixture of buyers. We do get like anywhere from sort of the lower end is probably been around the 500K mark now, and then all the way up to, 1.5 and closer to 2. So we get a real diverse group coming through, but it depends what they're trying to do. Like some of them will be purchasing with parents, or will be purchasing in a relationship, or will be purchasing as an individual, though that's very infrequent.
Yeah.
So I think, and that's the other narrative I think we like to push a little bit, is that most people never buy a home by themselves as an individual. It's not actually as common as you might think. So it is thinking about what your options are. And often that is also couples. So I think we see couples in that range around, the mil mark when they're buying their first homes.
It's funny to think that $1 million doesn't seem like a lot of money when you're looking at property nowadays. But yeah, I guess Papamoa and sort of just before the Mount, you can probably get something in and around that price bracket, and definitely in Tauranga.
Yeah.
Probably Tauranga a little bit less, sort of that you might pick something up for 800 or so around
and
there.
then like Mount Maunganui.
Oh yeah, that's
if you wanted freehold, what are you moving into there?
So you're $1 million plus. You're probably 1.2 if you want something with a bit of yard and that sort of thing.
So in terms of what you're seeing in market as well with buyers, like what are they looking like at the moment? Are you seeing a lot more first home buyers in
I'd say
Tauranga?
probably about 60% first home buyers.
Wow.
And I think the reason for that is there's a bit of that, again, my experience
The
before,
flattening.
fear of missing out and trying to get in before investors come back into the market, which probably happens when the interest rates drop back a little bit.
And we did
cash
see the
flow becomes
OCR was on hold.
Yeah, so that went flat,
Yeah, which means maybe, it would have, if it had gone up, it would have signaled that maybe there was going to be another 2-3 hikes, because they don't tend to do one hike at a time.
Yeah.
So the fact that they've flattened, I'm hopeful that there will be that decrease coming, which, I guess means maybe now is that opportunity.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's also circumstantial. You've just got to go when you're able to.
I think so, there's no perfect time to buy. But so pretty much I would say 60% first home buyers.
That's an interesting, insight to provide, because I think like the data has said around 27% like as an average across New Zealand, but we're probably seeing different trends in different pockets. And I don't think that data is all that recent, like over the last, 2024 in particular.
Yeah, because I regularly check that, I guess, with other mortgage advisors that I connect with as well. And but most are seeing up around the 50% first home buyer from what
that
I've
feels
spoken
right to me as well.
Yeah.
And so what sort of tips would you have for first home buyers that are looking in market now?
I would say just get really solid on your criteria and don't rush into a decision, because I don't see the market taking off straight away. So I would say, until those rates flatten out and people get a bit more confidence, I would say you've got a little bit of time, and through winter it's normally a quieter period anyway.
Yeah.
So I would say just get really solid on your criteria. Don't waste time looking, but take your time, and you've probably got a bit of time to play with to
find the right one.
There's
and
lots.
don't get disheartened if there are lots of other offers.
There's
and that can be a lot less stressful for a first home buyer,
for sure,
as opposed to feeling because I mean that's what auction's for. They're to create a scarcity mindset and get you to spend more. So if you can kind of wait until it passes in and then negotiate and have a bit more power in the conversation.
Yeah, and I guess don't give up on that. Like, a lot of first home buyers are intimidated by seeing an auction sign because they don't want to pay for everything up front and then go to the auction, be disappointed. So I guess don't be intimidated by that, because 50% of chances that they'll probably get passed in and you'll have a chance to keep it on your radar and go for it.
Yeah, true. And then the other thing is, I guess with that is you can always make an offer in advance and see whether or not there's any interest to bring that forward.
Yep.
In terms of, I guess, your property experience, like you've now purchased a couple of properties, you're now working as a mortgage advisor, you've had a property mentor. What other kind of tools have you done to help you on your property journey? Are there any books that you've read? What kind of recommendations do you have in that space?
Yeah, I would definitely, I guess, like, podcasts more so than books for me.
Like Slice this podcast?
Correct. Yeah. Probably chuck this on your favourites. Hit the star in the top right hand corner. Is it a star?
I don't know either.
Yeah. And like, you've had some guests on that have got podcasts as well. And I think I listen to podcasts at the gym. So just trying to multitask, and in the car, obviously, just trying to utilise
when
all the
driving
time.
to Auckland to go on a podcast.
Correct. Yeah. I was listening to this one on. Yeah, I guess more so podcasts for me, but that's probably because I'm a little bit further along in the journey. Early on, everyone's probably read it, or heard about it, but Rich Dad, Poor Dad is
such a good read, though. If you haven't read it, you have to read it.
And
if you have read it again.
Like 10 years later, because you've learnt more, and then a different part of the book probably applies to you.
Yeah, different things sort of sit with you, right?
Yeah, but like, really, early on in that book, he talks about getting your hands dirty and having sort of like a home and income style sort of property where you can add value to it later on, and get that to pay for your accommodation costs. Like, those tools are just so good. Yeah,
I think it's the mindset ones are key, particularly when you might not know much about property or financial literacy and you want to kind of break into that space. Like, mindset's a big part of it, as well as reading tips on how to do it. It's definitely another thing, is actually how can you find those revenue streams. And if you're trying to build towards a deposit, it might be doing different things. So continuing that train of thought, there's obviously there's different things that you can do and different revenue streams that you can maybe lean into to save for that deposit, like your salary, that sort of thing. What kind of tips do you have in that space?
So KiwiSaver. Yeah, so obviously you can use KiwiSaver. Some people might not know, but you can use KiwiSaver to buy your first home. So I would say it sort of acts as a bit of a forced savings tool to up your KiwiSaver contribution and make sure that you're sort of putting that money away, not withdrawing it. And then you can obviously only withdraw that when you buy your first home. So yeah, it's just a handy tool to sort of out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, particularly if you don't have, good self-control over those spending habits.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other one is just either reduce or pay down as much debt as you can, because, like, for example, people don't probably know exactly how it impacts, but they basically, even if you've got a credit card with a 10 grand limit and then you only owe 2 grand on the credit card, they basically take the full limit as a liability to the borrower. So,
which basically means they're going to look at you and say, oh, you've got 8K less of earning potential, therefore we're going to lend you, more than 8K, because it's a multiplier factor, but it's going to reduce your lending capability. Yeah,
so example would be, I had a couple with it obviously depends on your other factors, but I had a couple with a 10K credit card that reduced their lending by 100K. So it's quite substantial. And even if you reduce that credit card down to 3 grand or 2 grand or something like that,
they still look at it as the 10K.
Yeah. So I would say that, as well as, I don't know if many people have heard of turnkey. Have you had any discussions about turnkey?
Not really talked about it though. Yeah.
Okay. So, but prior to being a mortgage advisor, I was in construction. So I was a sales rep for a building materials company for a few years, and then a sales manager, 10 years all up for the company. And so I learned a lot about sort of turnkey contracts. So the way that works basically is, if, in simple terms, if you buy a property for 500K, put down a 50K deposit at the start, basically you don't settle on that loan until the house is built and the settlement happens after code of compliance. So during that period, you don't carry a mortgage. So all you need to do is come up with a deposit, and then you can continue to rent, not paying any costs during that period towards other accommodation costs, and then that way it's kind of easier because a lot of people that...
So during that period, you can potentially pay down your debt or...
Yeah, well, a lot of people can get struggle to budget because they will be paying, if you do a construction loan, they'll be paying the rental cost as well as drawing down on the construction loan as they go through it as it progress.
Yeah.
So if you're building a new house, turnkey contract's a really good way to not have to settle on 90% of the mortgage until the end of
fees,
and everything else that goes with it. So yeah, that's one tip to ask about or get curious about. If you're, I guess from a construction background, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But
/ if you're in the market, I guess, to buy, that type of property.
Yeah, generally speaking, a turnkey contract is a little bit more than a construction type loan with a building company, but they just capitalise into the mortgage, so you pay it off over the time. But yeah, it's a good way to get on the market, and I know a few people and I've got a few clients that have done that, and it's just a lot tidier in terms of lending as well for the banks.
Yeah.
Otherwise, costs can sort of fluctuate and blow out throughout.
And they don't know exactly what that lending amount's going to look like until it's completed construction.
Correct, yeah. So fixed price, I guess, is what you get at the start, and that gives certainty for banks because they don't really like anything but that pretty much. So
absolutely. And in terms of that, just going back to paying down your debt as well, and because that's massive, if you have a 10k credit card or 3k credit card with the option to go up to 10k, that they can say, hey, no, 100k of that lending we were going to give you isn't, you're not eligible for it. Hire purchase as well, you also brought that up earlier in our conversation. So do you want to share a little bit more about how customers can change habits around that, and in relation to that, what a mortgage advisor like yourself is looking at when you're seeing things like hire purchase, afterpay, even like let's jump into subscriptions as well, Spotify, Netflix and things like that. Like, what do those different costs look like from the eyes of the bank and the creditor? Yeah,
it's the old Avo on toast sort of analogy. To be honest, it doesn't have as big an impact as you would think in terms of the subscription model stuff. Yeah. Because basically what happens is, and if it does, we highlight that as an internal analysis before we send it on to the banks. So basically it summarises it. There's actually I'll give away all the secrets, but there's a program called Ilion that basically you send me a link of your bank statements, I plug it into the program, and then it summarises all of those categories. Yeah. And then I can pinpoint exactly where you need to change your spending habits or pay down a little bit of debt or anything like that. So
to increase your...
It's actually all done internally, and it's not as bad as you would think. Obviously,
it was a little bit for a while there, right? When Triple CFA came in and they were like, look at everything line by line, but now you're seeing some improvements. Yeah, definitely. And as long as you've got coverage, so there's a UMI, uncommitted monthly income is basically the number that we look at after all of those income expenses, afterpay, credit cards, all of that stuff. Basically, that what if I went to Macca's? Like, is that part of my UMI?
Yeah, well, it will be somewhere, but it's built in, and as long as it looks green, we just ignore what that Macca's if you're going for a Big Mac or a McChicken or whatever.
When I am at Macca's, I'm actually pescatarian. If I am at Macca's, I'm getting a fillet of fish. But it's like, we go line by line. It's like, look, mate, your finances look pretty good, but it's weird that you've got a fillet of fish. Like, no one gets that.
That's probably a cheap option compared to some of the options on there.
Yeah, there you go. I'm just being fiscally responsible.
Yeah, that's it.
But yes, I think that's really interesting because so many people worry about that. Like, what is the advisor looking at? And I think, as you said, like, you can give feedback on what habits need to change, what debts you need to reduce, what you should pay down versus how much you should be saving over here as well, and what that balance looks like.
So just to touch on that, I'm actually working on a sort of a program, sort of a financial fitness program. So at some point or another on my page, you'll see that roll out. But basically, 90 days is really the period that you need to keep nice and clean and tidy. That's all. Bank statements only go back 90 days to the banks, that sort of thing, unless you're with that lender already, and they can obviously, they've got algorithms that can pull that data up and have a look at what you're spending. But if you're going to another bank,
which is why it can be good to go to another bank as well.
Yeah. They can't see that until you input that data, and you can put it into categories and help, not hide, but generally package
make
that
it
up.
look tidy so that you can present your best, business case.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm working on at the moment is a 90-day program to sort of get you financially fit and get you ready to
for that 90-day
come and see
period.
me. Yeah, because a lot of the time I'll get a client and I'll do like a plan of attack with them, and normally or maybe 50% of first home buyers, I'll have to put a calendar mark in the diary 6 months out to come back and see me. So sort of trying to get more proactive on that.
On the front end around what those finances need to look like to get you ready for that next step. And
one of the big ones, and you can see it a mile away when you look at statements, is alcohol. Like, people quite often go out for drinks, and you've missed your Evo on toast 4 days that week for $20, but you've gone to a bar and spent $200 on drinks and shouted a couple of rounds. So it's not the
Evo on toast, it's
the beers. I don't think so. Yeah, so part of the financial plan might be to have a look at your, general spending habits over and above like what you actually plug into your budget.
And I think that's really helpful to know that you're kind of moving into that space and releasing some sort of course or package. But I think a lot of people just don't know, and that can be daunting. But you need to remember that actually going to an advisor or doing, a course or something like this can help you get ready for that step when you help you make the best business case for the bank before the creditors actually look at it and give you a yes, no, maybe you've done these things. So that's the major advantage to working with an advisor in advance of the bank as well, is they can guide you through that and package it up so that you're more likely to be successful.
Correct. Yeah. And it's, for 95% of our clients, it's free. So there's no reason why. I think people get a little bit confused about that, because there are financial advisors, mortgage advisors that do charge, but for me and most advisors that I know.
Yeah, most of them don't.
Yeah. So it's free. You get the benefit of making sure you don't make a mistake and tell the bank something that you, and then
you can just position yourself, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like an interview before the interview kind of thing, like a role play with your advisor, and they can go through and say maybe the subscriptions are okay, but this credit card isn't. Actually, yes, you've got savings over here, but they're not going to increase your lending by 100K, paying down your 10K credit card is. So they can help you work out where to put your money to prepare to get ready for that first purchase.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I probably shouldn't say, but what you can do is reduce your credit card
I saw the smirk appear on your face. I was like, what's going on?
What you can do is temporarily reduce your credit card down to get lending, and then decide afterwards whether or not you would like to increase that credit card a little bit again. There you go. There's a little gold nugget for you. And obviously you preferably wouldn't have a credit card, but those are other options that you can think about.
I think with credit cards, you need to know what your money mindset is as well, because some people can make those regular repayments and can operate in that way, others can't. I'm actually not that great with credit cards, because I just am a bit lazy when it comes to moving money around, and I just like it to either be allocated towards something or not. So when money comes in, it splits into separate accounts, and then I can't touch it. And a credit card is all about using it, because you're either getting it to get points or because you need to use it, and it can get hard to actually get into that habit of making repayments or using the credit card in the appropriate way. So I think you've got to be really careful and honest with yourself around what your spending habits are like and whether or not that's a good tool for you, because it's a good tool for some but not for all.
Yeah, and I think people know themselves, you got to be your own drill sergeant almost, and be quite disciplined about how you manage it, because if you're doing it for the points, you also have to take into account all the fees and any interest or anything that you do have to pay. So
I don't have one, so I just can't be bothered with the it's extra effort for me to kind of keep on top of it. So I just prefer to have the money that I have and allocate it in the way that I do.
Yeah. We've got a American Express and Air Points and that sort of thing, but we use it pretty responsibly, touch wood. so far. So, and we go to the States to visit family sometimes and like to travel. So it's quite handy when you're traveling with.
Yeah, it can
benefits.
be good for that. And if you know what the purpose is, but if it's just there for the sake of it and then you just end up using it and then, you just have to have the right financial habits around it. So it's probably not the first, financial tool that should be in your toolkit. Like you should really have your account set up and structured well first. You should have a whole lot of other kind of financial confidence and process in place before you start kind of leveling up to credit cards. And for some people, I just actually don't think they're a great thing.
No, not at all. Yeah, I think in sort of a priority to get sorted, you'd probably go sort of those more higher purchases because people tend to get a little bit excited and tick up the car or whatever. So try to knock those off.
Cars are also a liability, not an asset. So like if you're thinking about your personal wealth journey, you're not making money by buying a car, so that everyone knows.
And you can also use, if you do have a car that's that you can sell down and get a cheaper car, you can use that money as genuine savings to put back towards your deposit. So again, it's sort of maybe a temporary thing until you get your affairs in order, buy your house, and then later on you can have a look at it again. But yeah, that can be used as genuine savings if you sell that down. Obviously, if you've got a really big loan, you don't want to sell it down and have this big loan. But so I'd say those sort of big liabilities like that, cars, pay those down first, then credit cards, then your afterpays and stuff, because they're all normally relatively smaller amounts.
So
it's a bit of a pyramid or reverse pyramid in that sort of sense.
And then in terms of savings as well, because a lot of people talk about this, but should I be putting my money into savings or should I be paying down the debt? Can you kind of...
It's really depending on your situation, but you mean, my personal, and not for all clients, but my personal strategy is I'd rather not pay down the debt on my mortgage, on the owner occupied potentially.
Oh, I actually meant this debt, but we'll go into that shortly after, but I actually meant like the hire purchase, the credit cards, the afterpay. Like should you, if you're a first home buyer, go, I'm going to save 50 grand over here, like to add to my deposit.
Right, with you.
Or should I move it into the debt? Or is it a mixture of the two? Because you might need enough of the deposit to get into.
Yeah, and we can normally tell you that by doing the analysis of the whole picture and telling you how far you're short and what's going to have the most minimal
impact.
What
levers to pull, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's pretty hard to sort of, without specifics, but debt definitely has more of an impact on the overall spending.
But you still need enough of a deposit to get in, so it's a balancing act. But therefore, because we get a lot of questions from our audience around that, and it is circumstantial, but therefore you do actually want to go and see someone to help you work out exactly what's going to improve your circumstances. And moving back into that other piece though, because it's an interesting topic of conversation. So I'm thinking where you were going with that is like, say you're investing in property, you have the opportunity to either pay down your mortgage, pay it down fast and build equity in the property, or you can potentially go interest free or not try and pay that property down and then potentially buy more property with any extra funds that you're able to accrue.
Yeah. So my personal opinion, I'll call this general financial advice, not my financial advice, but
there's a disclaimer at the end.
Is to buy more property, because it's the same as for a good analogy, I guess, is when you're trying to save for your first house, you're chasing the market, trying to save that money up. I guess it's the same if you're trying to pay down a mortgage with your income only and you're just trying to essentially save that money on your mortgage. Whereas if you've got a property where you've bought again and now you've got this capital value working for you and you're leveraging the bank's money rather than your own money, you're going to live a better lifestyle while the property's growing, and then eventually you have the choice. You can sell that property and pay more of that mortgage, or continue to invest in property. So
and you're sort of diversifying your portfolio by having like a couple of different investments as opposed to all your eggs in the one basket.
And the other thing you can do is, like, there's some property courses out there. I don't have any myself, but I can recommend some if you get in touch, where they kind of give you pointers on how to buy cash flow positive properties. So that's not even going to be, it's not the option of paying down or
It's a bit of both. Like you
Yeah.
can put renters into the property and they
Then you
can
actually
cover the
can
cost of that and even
get an
repay
income
some
for
of the
yourself.
mortgage or
Yeah.
go back to that seventh income to become a millionaire.
Yeah, so you're kind of, and again, that's out of the Robert Kiyosaki model, is cash flow positive properties eventually are going to just continue to pay you over a long period of time. So, yeah, you're kind of doing the best of both worlds with that scenario. At the moment, it's harder because interest rates are high and there's not a lot of cash flow positive properties out there, but there are coaches.
It's pretty hard to find cash flow positive, when you've got interest rates as they are.
Yeah.
And the price of the mortgage, the property that you're buying, Yeah,
exactly. But if you can get one that sort of breaks even, and then next year when interest rates go down, touch wood, then you're in a pretty good
my
position.
property in Raglan breaks even, but half of the mortgage is coming off at the end of this month, so we'll see how that goes. But again, it ebbs and flows over time because I've had that property for a while.
What about you? What do you think in terms of paying down the mortgage rather than
similar approach? But I think it depends on your risk appetite. So I am a bit more high risk. So I bought 2 properties and have definitely just been growing my debt despite my income's actually been dropping from where I was when I was working in the banks to now.
Right.
And that's the nature of building a business as well. I mean, even taking the jump into your own business is a risk as well. But I'm also at an age where I'm comfortable taking risk. When you're younger, you can take on more risk. You can stretch out the amount of leverage that you have. I think I personally, as an individual, about 1.2 million in debt.
Yep.
So, and that's not including what goes into my company. So that's just property. So it's very good to say, how much you own in property. But when you've got mortgages, it actually looks a little bit different. So I think it depends on your own personal circumstances. But when you're younger, you can afford to take a bit more risk. That's what I think.
Yeah, for sure. And the more you buy properties, experience renting them out, and know what comes with it and what hidden costs might pop up along the way, then you kind of have that experience in the bank and have more confidence to do what you want to do. But you're definitely right. That's why I said general advice, because it depends on your risk and your goals and people
life
want different
stage,
things.
like age and stage as well. Like, should
yeah.
you do that when you're 65 and about to retire? No, not necessarily.
No,
Probably
exactly.
not. And that's why the banks actually won't lend to you the same when you're that age, because they don't think that either.
Correct.
But I mean, we have an ebook as well and a property course that leans into some of those investment strategies. So there's lots of information out there, but it is actually getting close to, what your personal circumstances are.
And educate yourself as much as possible, because you can take all the courses in the world, and I'm sure you guys run a quality setup, and I'd recommend doing that if you're early in the process. But educating yourself, then you know for sure what you want to
and what your options are, and maybe what the best strategy is for you. You can work through and do that analysis for yourself, I guess.
For sure.
And what are your, looking back, what are the biggest tips you'd give to, you said when you were, what did you say when I was a kid? You're working in the mines, 21. When you were a kid, say 21, what advice would you give to that kid?
I wouldn't change anything personally, because you got to live a little as well at the start. But one mistake I did make is when I was in the mines, I almost bought a house, but I chose to go travelling rather than buying a house, and spent the deposit on a year travelling around the things, which I wouldn't take back for the world, but probably with a little bit of more consultation and education, I probably could have done both.
Yeah.
Bought a house in Perth, rented it out, and then still had the rest of that cash to go travelling with. But in my head, it was a one or the other.
And that's so interesting. I literally have been planning to do some content on this, because my partner and I just went and stayed in Whangamata. So we bought a house, and I'm building a business. I don't have a lot of disposable income, but we moved to Whangamata, obviously privileged to be able to stay with family there, and then rented out our house. And then when we were also house sitting this year for a month for my partner's brother.
Is there an age limit for that? I feel like most people are babysitting cats and
they
dogs
are like cats and stuff. And so anyway, but we're now obsessed with it. So we're going again and Airbnb-ing the house, and then we're going to Europe. And while we're in Europe, we're Airbnb-ing the house. So we've used the asset to get money to travel. So I think you've moved into a really great point there, which is actually it's not always one or other. You can make your asset, your house, work for you.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with, like you just mentioned, Airbnb these days. even if it's in pockets, like you can rent your house out. Some people don't like it, but rent your house out for 9 months and then Airbnb it for 3 months over
the
summer.
3 months that we did, we made 10K, and it was actually people that we knew. And then we'll make another, can't remember how many bookings I've got, but like at least another 6. So like that's paying for our trip to Europe. Yep. So 16, awesome. 8 each. Yeah.
When we were in our first house, actually, we Airbnb'd a room out in our house.
Yeah, we didn't and that's the other option.
Yeah, so we didn't want a flatmate because we were like, that'd be annoying getting used to the same person all the time. So we were like, oh, let's have 100 people over a year into our house. Like that, you get sick of them and you just like see them leave. Yeah. But yeah, there was 1 month we made like 2K.
Oh, nice.
As a first home buyer, that's like
very
crazy money. And it was just a single room. They had the spare bathroom, and then it was only going for probably like 60 a night, but there was a couple of tack-on options where if you bought another person and they weren't a couple and they could sleep in the same room on like a air mattress and stuff that backpackers used to use. So and you'd meet some awesome, interesting people. Like we'd have German backpackers and all sorts of people come and go, but everyone really friendly. We had a Chinese family come and just store their suitcases in our room while they went to Queenstown for a week and then come back. That was probably the best. Yeah, that was probably the best guess we had. Yeah, and so there's those options now as well. So there's plenty of different ways to. I think the last thing you're going to do is lose your house. Like these options are all available.
And that's when interest rates are increasing too, like thinking about what you can do to make it work. And sometimes that could even be, you know, for those people that are struggling, it could be moving home and renting out their house to cover that period of time where it hurts. But yeah, 100%. lots of options.
Yeah, I think right at the start, even when you're a first home buyer, that rent vesting model is one definitely worth exploring because you're going to make a lot more money, in my mind, with the capital value of the property and leveraging the bank's investment in your house via a mortgage with high interest rates. But then you would be just sitting around waiting for something else to happen, you know? Like you kind of just got to take the reins and get in the market and let your money work for you rather than...
Take a leap of faith rather than working for your money.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, we've got one last question for you today, which is... Let's do your current home. I think I've changed. I used to do first home and now I'm doing current home. Yeah. So if your current home had a doorbell and that doorbell played a theme song, what would it play, Andre?
Tupac Hit 'Em Up.
Hey, easy. Nice.
But just because that'd be, I can't swear, but freaking cool.
People do swear. I'm like, you do you. But yeah. And you don't want to get sick of it either, you know? Nah. So it's got to be a banger.
Yeah, I listened to that song every time I used to, just the song before I went out onto the league field to play. So yeah, it's good.
Pump it up.
It's good to get a bit of energy levels up as well, isn't it?
Totally. I was playing Blink 182 before you arrived because I'm going to the concert tonight.
Oh, nice.
So that's what I was pumped for. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to have you.
Thanks very much for having us, and yeah.
Thank you for joining our community. Buying property isn't easy, but listening in will get you one step closer on your journey. Please leave an Apple or Spotify review and provide feedback so we can improve your experience. Join our Facebook group, A Safe Space to Learn Together, or follow us on Instagram at @slicetobuy. If you have any questions or topics you would like us to touch on, you can email us at hello@slicetobuy.com. A quick reminder, Slice the Podcast does not provide personalised investment advice. We are not acting as financial advisors or taking into account your circumstances. To get personalised advice, join us at slicetobuy.com and engage with our partners who can act as your financial advisor or lawyer and support you with your specific needs.